Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome. Hey, Angela, Tiffany, and Andrew. My name is Dev Myers, and I have a question. This question has been on my mind for some time now, but it's definitely come to the forefront due to this new administration and just continued reminders that the system that we built was not made for us, even though we put in the work. My question is, should we as Black people come together and make a collective effort to try and establish a majority in a state? I think that the reason why this question is even coming up for me is that, we do really well in our, local spaces, whether it's city council, mayor, but those powers are pretty limited. While it's a good thing that we're doing that, right? I think we should really think about us as Black people securing a majority in a state, because it does come with a lot of power, right? Even so, dwindling or limiting the harmful effects of oppressive policies from the federal government. So I just want to ask you, is this something that you guys think we should discuss as leaders? Should this be on the table? Thank you.
Welcome home, y'all, to the MiniPod. We had Dev Myers, our viewer, kick us off with a poignant question. So if you heard this week's podcast, you heard us talk about who exactly are our leaders. It came up organically, and Angela said, we should do our MiniPod on that. So I thought, no better time than to do this now and to have one of our viewer questions kick off the conversation. I got to say, Angela and Andrew, I love this question. The interesting thing is there is no state where Black people are the majority, but there are states where people of color make up the majority. They call them majority minority states. But it does speak to, because let's say, okay, we build a little Wakanda right here in America. Who are we electing president as this Wakanda? Who is our Wakandan cabinet? So I don't really have an answer. I have thoughts about us being a leaderless community, but I want to hear from the president and the chief of staff of the Blacks, Angela Rye, and what she got to say about it.
Nice try, Negro. This was on you, because in the last podcast you said, who are our leaders? So I was like, oh, Tiff, I want to know who you say the leaders are.
I cannot think of somebody who I would say this is the leader for Black people. And I think the reason why, Angela and Andrew, is because when we look at the civil rights movement, right, we could name, there, I would say, probably 20 leaders that we could say these were the people who were leading movements. I think as our rights expanded, and now they're shrinking, as we built wealth amongst ourselves that later was stolen, the cycle we go on, our interest disaggregated. And social media democratized who has a voice. So then everyone became leaders in their own right. And some people became so seduced by the idea of being a leader, but not actually building change. So I think we're at this moment. I don't know if there's a single person who should wear the crown and take on that responsibility. I think there are people who lead different things. I think LaTosha Brown, who runs Black Voters Matter, if there were a cabinet position of you got to go out and mobilize people, or you're the chief administrator of love, then I would say LaTosha is that. Just because the mainstream outlets don't, profile her on 60 Minutes, you all should know, like, the work that she has done tirelessly for decades. She is you cannot tell the story of America without involving LaTosha Brown in that. So I'd say she's a leader. I think you guys are leaders. We talked in the main podcast about Andrew founding YEO, Young Elected Officials, that, I think that cast a wide net of influence across our local politics. Angela, I've written about you. I have the pleasure of being your friend for a couple decades, but I think you changed the way. I know you've done a lot more. I'm just talking about in media. You changed the way that people consume media, because for so long people didn't see themselves reflected. I think you added significant ratings to CNN and brought people in. That was the cake that you gave them so they could eat the broccoli later. But people started paying attention to politics because you made the message so so digestible and so plain. And because you weren't for the bullshit when you were sitting across from people. So that positioned you to be a leader. You use that platform to then do other things. You were already a leader on Capitol Hill, not just in the professional positions, but you came to make change. You built impact strategies. So you're a leader. I've certainly tried to be a leader and lead things in my capacity in journalism by starting products, building newsrooms. So I don't know that we can have one leader, but maybe I'm wrong.
I like that. I mean, I was actually going to challenge the assertion that we needed a personality individual to follow. I think the model of leadership has evolved over time. And as the mediums have expanded, people are getting information in different ways through different platforms. We got to cover all the turf. But before I go there to make a point on the leader or not a leader, I just want to respectfully say to the brother, this is the list of states in this order that we need to go take over. District of Columbia, where we are already 44% of the population. Mississippi, where we're 38% of the population. Louisiana. 33%. Georgia, 33%. The state of Maryland, 32%. That's a plurality when you're talking about elections and trying to move the direction. And the crazy thing about this, y'all, with the exception of the District of Columbia and Maryland, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Georgia are all states led by deep red conservative elected officials at every at the various levels, from the courts to the governor's mansion to the legislative arms. If we were able to not only show up in these states, but also be registered and then activate the vote, man.
You change the landscape. You change the political map.
It totally shifts it, right? So there's some strategy that should and could go into whether or not there are places right here in this land here that we cultivated where we can actually take on a state. And those three states, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Georgia, would be perfect when you consider that we would shift. We would turn over the table on the political map and the electoral college map that right now increasingly is cutting Black people out of it, cutting our impact out of
That's
it.
What I have something to say about pioneering, but I want to hear Andrew. I'm sorry, Andrew. I was rude. I interrupted you, but I want to say something about pioneering, but I want Angela to weigh in on this leadership question. But Andrew, don't let me forget, because what you just laid down with that list, I got thoughts. Well, go ahead, Angela. Sorry.
I hope we go all the way there. And then finally, I'll just say, I love the fact that maybe we can't name just one leader. I would just love for the leaders, wherever they are, in their respective places and whatever they're leading, that they actually step up, speak truth to power, and take us somewhere. Because if you're not bringing some folks along, you're a man or a woman taking a walk, as they say.
Come on, Chinese proverb.
Yeah.
First I want to just add, I would love to know what Alabama's numbers are too, because you didn't name them. So I'm just curious how far behind they are in our overall demographic. And is it the demographic of voting age people, or is it the Black demographic, period? Curious about those.
Those percentages were Black percentage of the population in those states. So by percent, not necessarily.
According to the U.S. Census, the Black population is 26.6% in Alabama.
In Alabama? Mm-hmm. Interesting. I wouldn't have thought it would be that different. But I guess, what is fascinating to me about this moment, like I agree with you guys, obviously. Like, even when you go back and look at the civil rights era, sure, Dr. King was the face of the movement, but I think that if he were alive today, he would tell us there was a whole group of folks who were actively engaged. And even if they weren't all under the same umbrella, they were marching literally towards the same goal. I wonder though, like, if we were put in a position where they said, if it's the Trump administration, since they're in power now, they're like, hey, we need one spokesperson for Black people. Who's going? I think that would turn into battle royale. But I would love to know, like, if you had to give me your top 5 list, who you sending? And I'm also curious about if you only had one call to make to, like a Black leader, like, to represent your national interest, who are you calling? Why does that matter? I think that we have to get to a point where not only where we just pick one, but if groups of us are picking one person, then we have a table, we have a kitchen cabinet, a board of advisors of folks who are authorized to make moves on our behalf. When you consider, I mean, I don't even know if they were deputized or not, or if they just kind of took charge, but when you consider what happened in 1865, when the Secretary of War and General Stanton went into Savannah, Georgia, to talk to Garrison Frazier, 19 ministers. So at that point, the church is where leadership existed for the Black community. They negotiated what the terms of our freedom would be on the other side of the Emancipation Proclamation. And it wasn't because there was, this edict that came down from President Lincoln at the time. It's because there was just a massacre that they were like, it was so considered George Floyd of 1865, but it was a bunch of Black folks that got killed in a river, right? Like, when you consider that, there were 19 of them even then at the table. We are a communal people. So it's not like we really need to pick a singular leader. But if we had to have our starting five or the folks who were going to beat the other team at the All-Star game, Tiff, I know you appreciate those analogies as our resident sports expert. Who we put in the game?
Who we putting up?
Who playing? Who going to the Olympics on our behalf?
Who y'all got round there?
Right? This is an ongoing conversation. I love that question. I would love to hear from the audience too. I want to make sure we're asking correctly. You're saying your top 5 leaders. Like if
who you sending?
But who's if the president says, send me the top 5 leaders, it don't have to be this president. Any leader of the nation.
No, I think it should be this president.
Okay.
Especially because it's ultra inflammatory. And then if you think about all of his rhetoric, he's definitely the one that would be like, I need the one Black.
Yes.
Who's the one Black? I'm not talking to all you, one Black. So if everybody had one Black and we knew we were going to have to narrow down from this top 5, who's on your top 5?
I like that
or
question.
If you got your one. If you got your one, send in your one. But right now, a lot of people, I think especially when I was the CBC executive director, Congressional Black Caucus executive director, we caught so much heat anytime we pushed back against President Obama. I think there are a lot of people would say President Obama. To Andrew's point from the last podcast, we were teasing this, a lot of people might say Michelle Obama. What are your whys? What are the things that they're leading where you're saying this makes them the authority on Black America? I'm not just talking about them. I'm talking about if you say Reverend Sharpton or Jesse Jackson Sr., or you say resurrect Dr. King, or if you say actually like Reverend Bernice King or Cory Booker's my guy, or, I like Hakeem Jeffries. He seems to represent my interest, or, Dr. Umar. I want to know.
Right, anybody who is your reason.
I like the question. I would probably answer. I'm not gonna give a full answer.
You got to answer.
No. This is what I would say. I would say
Tiff said, I need to sit on this
there
for 3
are
weeks.
Characteristics that I want in a negotiating room. If what we're doing is sending a group of people to negotiate with the president, I can tell you 2 individuals that I want. Two characteristics I want. One, I want the person who speaks the language of the person we're negotiating with, right? They know the subtext. And
Andrew
some
said
might
he's
call it also
Tiff.
the diplomat. And I also want the hail raiser in the room.
Angela.
Because I need the
Sure.
person who we are negotiating with to know that you can deal with this or you can deal with that.
You can get with
You
this.
can get with this,
or you can get with that.
You can get with this.
Just saying.
You can get with that. Engine.
And there's
Number
some
9.
other things that would come into it, but
Hallelujah.
characteristics for
Transit
me would be how I would make that.
I
decision.
honestly,
Pick it up.
I'm actually
Y'all
not kidding. Angela would definitely be on my top 5, but I need more thought into a more comprehensive list. And especially if you got one call to make, like me and my friend, our friend Albert, we always joke. Albert is always like, "Cause something happened to me, call Angela Rye." I'm like, yeah, I would say that. So you would definitely be in my top 5, but I need more time to think. We have to revisit the conversation because I need more time.
Let me tell you guys, I think I agree with Andrew. Like, Andrew for me is my resident diplomat.
So you want Andrew? You got your top 5 ready now?
For sure. No, maybe, but I'll say I definitely want Andrew. I don't know which one, but I would want a faith leader. Who comes to mind for me right now is Reverend Haynes, Freddie Haynes.
I thought you say Reverend Barber.
I love Reverend Barber too. Dang.
We all have places.
Wow.
No.
Okay.
No, I know what you mean.
Reverend Barber's a good one, though, too. I appreciate this tip, but I think if we were going to have a meeting about the needs of the whole, like all of America, I would have Reverend Barber on that one. I think for Black America, I'm picking Freddie Haynes.
Okay.
I think I would want like a Black intellectual, so somebody that represents academia.
You just saying
quality.
You're not saying who, or do you know?
I know, but I tried to give you a name, and then you threw another name, and I was like, oh, that's a good one. But then I had to retract. If I had to pick a Black academician, I would pick. See, I be trying to make a point. So the person I'm thinking about is the Harvard president they got rid of,
Claudine Gay.
Yeah, I would want to do that just because it'd be like, yeah, you thought you were gonna take her out of Harvard, but she's in the most important room, that kind of a thing. And then I want, like, if there was a way to, I don't even know, she would have to like violate some rule to do this probably. But if there was a way to have someone go and make the constitutional arguments that we need to be made, I would want it to be the good sister Ketanji Brown Jackson.
I knew you were going to say her.
Blessed.
With her cowrie shells.
With the cowrie shells. A requirement. In fact, can you wear a cowrie suit?
Yes.
And then I would want a business leader at the table that can make the economic arguments. And so my business leader that I would pick, because I trust him and I know he's always had our back when we're looking when we don't, is Robert Smith.
Yeah. Shout out to Robert. Well, you coming up with yours.
How many do I have?
I thought that was 5. Yeah,
I don't have enough women. Oh, I had 2.
Well, you reserve a right to come back with a more comprehensive list. Because we all gonna.
I feel like civil rights also needs to be represented. And I'll tell you that my battle on that right now is that it feels like a lot of the organizations. Oh, you know who I would pick?
Who?
He's not over the organization anymore.
Oh, I know.
But one of my favorite people to learn from, to listen to on strategy. Oh, I gotta have 2. It's 2 of them actually. I call them my siblings. That's Rashad Robinson and Alicia Garza.
Yes.
And damn it, I didn't left out Latasha.
I know.
Get to combine with your.
You gotta
that's too many.
take some time.
We still need
That's
the
what
squad just outside the room.
But
Yeah.
Who knows
and
that there are consequences.
I need you to be in there so you go and report out what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Come back
You're gonna
and
be out
have the
April Ryan.
readout.
So
Have the readout.
We'll give this some thought. I hope we can do this next week.
This is really hard.
We got a week to figure it out.
This is my last thing.
Okay.
I promise. I just want to. I want us to think about how historically people who didn't always get the national recognition had some tremendous impact. People always go to Maynard Jackson about what he did for Atlanta in terms of creating Black wealth that was multi-generational. And so I also think it's important for us to stop making it seem like the platform on which you stand determines the impact and the quality of your leadership. That is not always true. And it also is not true that just because you have a platform that you are also a leader.
Yeah.
Come on.
So I think
love that.
I mean, at least in my opinion, that doesn't mean I'm not meaning to influence what the audience feels, but from my perspective, I think it's important. I think the price of leadership is responsibility, and everything with the platform is not responsible.
Okay. Y'all are seeing this on Monday. Drop your top 5 to answer Angela's question, and we will have that's our homework. We'll get our top 5, and then we'll come back and either discuss this on the main
Y'all
pod
damn
or another mini
going
pod.
to answer this question. Y'all really
Can I
going to
also
have
say,
That's too heavy.
I love that we moved away from a single Black leader.
Yeah.
That's not how
Because
Black
It's
people
never
are.
been a single Black leader.
Well, we have always looked. In fact, you can go any church any Sunday and folks, well, where the leader at? Where's our? And I just want us to resist this Eurocentric model of leadership, that it has to be, this sort of the survival of the fittest type. This is the Donald Trump mold, the strong man, parody, really that he parodies. We as a community are so complex, diverse, incredible, whatever it is, I love the fact that we are thinking about this in the way of how the community shows up in the space.
Yeah.
And not how one person shows up in the space. That weight is just too heavy for one.
Yeah. I just want to close this out really quickly by saying something about pioneering, because that is what it will take, to the viewer's question. It will take us being willing to uproot and go establish community in some of these places. And if we did that all across the Bible Belt and in the South, we could literally change the electoral map of this country. I want to shout out Mychael Harriot. who is doing just
Here.
that. Michael Harriot, and I'm saying this because he's talked about it and he's going to be writing about it. You all know he's a brilliant writer, but he bought acres of land in the deep South. And when I tell you, looking at his property, he could build 50 houses, a school, and a hospital. He bought a plantation. It was a former plantation.
Yeah.
And he bought it. And it is
turned into a black settlement.
Oh, it is the blackest place I've ever been.
It.
And it is beautiful. And you can literally, the slave quarters are still intact on the ground. I mean, it's like going back in time, and he's turned it into this beautiful, safe space. So it just got me thinking when I was down there, like, yes, that's what it would take. And if the acres of land are not expensive in the Bible Belt, and imagine if 100 of us said, yeah, we're going to go to Mississippi and buy land, and we can't trust the infrastructure here, so we're going to build our own schools. We're going to establish our own community. I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but I'm like, the white folks would come kill us. They would come burn it down.
As they always have.
As they always have, Angela, from the Red Summer of 1919 through the random acts of violence to the Greenwood District of Tulsa, to Elaine, Arkansas. And it wasn't just men, women, and children. They killed babies, okay, literal babies. So I think about that, and we'd have to have serious security. But pioneering is something to think about for us in this time of danger. Should we be pioneering someplace? Should we be setting up compounds someplace? Not as doomsdayers, but as, we still keeping our day jobs. We're not going to Occupy Wall Street, but we are building something ourselves.
Yeah.
And
And it's getting back in touch with what we already know. Black folks, after their liberation through the Emancipation Proclamation, pioneered their way all the way out west.
Yeah.
Set up whole communities of formerly enslaved and held it down for
out west. And we don't talk enough about
expansion.
that migration. That is how
That's
Angela's
right.
family actually, because y'all were Louisiana, right? And then
Louisiana.
Louisiana.
Right, tell it. Louisiana.
We focus so much on Mississippi, Chicago, but there, we fanned out all over.
Absolutely.
I want to tell you guys real quick, since we were talking about Georgia a little bit and Tiff brought up pioneering, you guys should look up, and this is for the listeners and you too, if you haven't, this group of Black folks that bought property, 96 acres in an area they called Freedom, Georgia. I did an interview with them that we lost. I would love for us to talk to them. They are doing some incredible things. And they're calling it the Black Wall Street of the New South and that kind of thing. So
I'd love to talk to them on site.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be great.
Yeah.
Pay for it, Tiff. Send us reparations.
Done.
Okay.
Done.
All right.
Well, this is a great
love
mini
you, Black leaders.
y'all.
I look forward to hearing these folks' answers on their top 5.
I know. I look forward to hearing y'all's. How about that?
I'm really going to give this some
Even
thought.
though I had a top 9.
Yes. But we're going to come back. We're going to narrow it down to our each of our top 5. All right. Well, thanks for listening. Be sure to tell your friends about these mini pods that drop. And remember, the single pods, go back and make sure you check out Angela's side pod that she did on all the executive orders. She dropped that last Tuesday. So you guys make sure you check that out. We are your hosts, Tiffany Cross, Angela Rye, and Andrew Gillum. Welcome home, y'all.
Welcome home, everybody.
Welcome home.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeart Radio, visit the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.